listeners. Nate here, coming to you live from Maine, and Brian way down there in Rhode Island, also coming to you live. Brian, what's the good word from the great ocean state the first week of summer?
You know, I think I mentioned that I got the Panera coffee membership, right? It's like $5 for the first 3 months and then $15, and then it's all the coffee you can drink, right?
Yes.
Well, now I can't stand the sight of Panera coffee. It's truly the worst coffee imaginable. It's just tasteless and awful, and you have to like work up your like intestinal fortitude, or your stomach fortitude to like walk over there and get the coffee. But one thing that I found is that I don't know. Well, I used to think that Dunkin' Donuts coffee just tasted like pesticides, but having run the Panera into the ground, I would now say that the Dunkin' Donuts coffee is at least tastes better by comparison. But the thing,
man, Brian, that is a rough state of play for your coffee consumption habits, man. Why don't you get some nice coffee beans from South America? You know, import some of those Sombra Bajo coffee beans from Panama or wherever, Costa Rica, and then you could get a nice grinder. And you could have like brilliant coffee that's delicious every single day for yourself, but you won't have to suffer the cruel ministrations of either Panera or Dunkin' Donuts. So what's the holdup?
Well, let me say this about the Dunkin' Donuts coffee I guess my opinion is that there's something about it where they've added like coffee flavoring to it or something.
Oh,
it's like the orange juice from like Tropicana or whatever. I mean, I guess they get to call it 100% orange juice, but what they do is they like juice a bunch of oranges and they sit in bags or whatever. And it's these flavor packets that they add that make it taste like orange juice and act like an orange
apparently the
base.
Tropicana orange juice is gray and sits in vats. And by the time they press the juice and it sits there in vats, just like you're saying, and it's like gray, and they have to dye it back to an orange color. Absolutely revolting. And you're saying a similar thing as you suspect similar foul play is going on at Dunkies?
It just tastes like too much like it's just there's a weird like artificial flavor to it that I now detect having drank a bunch of Panera coffee.
So it's not Panera that has the fake flavoring, it's Dunkies. Yeah. And you're saying that their coffee tastes suspiciously like coffee.
Yeah, well, it's a little too artificial. There's something going on with the flavoring. It just isn't like any other cup of coffee that you've had. Yeah.
Man, so what is the barrier to you getting, some of the gourmet organic coffee beans that are just delicious? And I mean, just like you could save money. Is it that you have to head out to the office in the morning and it's just too hard to to go through a whole French press routine while you're on the way out the door?
Well, I mean, grinding coffee is a complicated procedure. Like you have to like grind it to the exact right size, right? And then you need a good grinder that gets you a consistent grind. And then
that's true. We have dual grinders here at my house, and one is set on the fine grind for the latte machine, and the other is set to the coarse grind of the French press.
All right. Well,
like for us, it's a button push. You do have to pour some beans in the hopper every once and again, but it's just a button press. So this is my recommendation to you. Now, you bought me a rice cooker for my birthday, so if it gets to be the end of July when your birthday is, Brian, we're gonna have to look into a coffee grinder for you because you are really. It sounds like you're really sucking canal water.
That's pretty much the case. Well, anyway, you'd have to like get up and make it. I guess is the barrier to making coffee.
I do have to boil it, and so the thing is, like, I have the only issue that I have is it would be nice. The travel mugs are all the vacuum sealed Yetis. That's what I've got, and so the only issue I have with making my French press coffee is I don't put any. It's just black coffee. I just like it to be black, and so it just takes forever to cool down. It is really a problem. It's like 45 minutes before I can drink my coffee because it's boiling hot. But man, well, Brian, I'm really sorry for your coffee plight. That sounds rough. What kind of coffee have you procured for the good old System Failure podcast on this beautiful Sunday morning?
Well, this is just from the local coffee shop, which is, I guess they make... Well, I stopped getting their regular coffee because I didn't think it was that great. And when the latte it's hard to screw up a latte. You can at least get a decent latte at the Panera, but it costs like $6 as opposed to free. One thing that's crazy, though, well, they have all these like flavored beverages. Like you can get like I don't know, like a marshmallow fluff latte, and like you scarcely see anyone ordering anything there that isn't like several hundred calories, and I'm like the only one getting like a straight up, at least without any sugar added. So they're just pumping out like the foams and all manner of crazy contraption. And I guess it'd be nice if they just specialize in like a normal cup of coffee.
I was at the tire repair, the Walmart, getting my new tires put on the car. I went to the Starbucks for a couple of few while I was waiting. You know, there's a Starbucks reasonably close to the Walmart Supercenter down there in Scarborough, Maine. And yeah, like you, Brian, I was appalled at what people were ordering. They were like, oh yeah, the man was saying, yeah, I did 4 pumps of raspberry and another 2 pumps of some other flavor. He was explaining this to his wife at the next table nearby, and I was like, you have got to be kidding me, dude. You're going to die. You cannot be drinking coffees with 6 pumps of flavoring in it. And the other thing is, do you remember that Simpsons episode where Bart Simpson accidentally burns down their plastic Christmas tree, turning it into they're turning their plastic tree into a green disc, you know, that gets melted. And he goes to bury it in the snow, and he's like, beautiful, white snow covers all. Well, this is just how I feel about lattes, you know, by way of agreement of your statement that you can't screw up a latte. It is true. The beautiful white milk covers all manner of sins in those lattes. So I can see why you're down the coffee shop picking up, you know, having them get you with the lattes, you know, interspersed among all the frou-frou drinks orders of the other clientele.
Nice. Well, that's a good early Simpsons callback there.
Yeah, well, I got mine. I hate to brag about my coffee, but the latte I'm currently drinking is cracking, thanks to my delicious coffee-making machine, Brian. So hopefully I can inspire you to follow suit. It's been a huge money saver, and you can get that organic coffee, and it's just much better all around.
All right. Well, I got to do something. But all right. Well, what fiery system failure topics do we have to talk about this week, Nate?
Well, I have to lament, Brian, my lack of foresight with respect to the Iran war, which still the quagmire drags on here now into the month of June. As you may recall, a couple of weeks ago, we saw that the yield on the 10-year T-note get up to about 4.6%, which is danger territory. And that's why I thought that Donald was going to have to finally do something here. And boy, I couldn't have been more wrong. Exactly the opposite has happened. Instead, we've gotten a half dozen more announcements in the last 2 weeks of a imminent peace treaty or peace deal or some kind of an agreement to end the ongoing hostilities over there in Iran. And it's interesting to see that the Donald claiming that they have some kind of a deal or that a deal is imminent, and then the Iranians come out and be like, "Yeah, there's no deal. This man's a liar. It's just not a reality." And so, it was true that the 2 podcasts ago, I became excited. I was thinking maybe the death and destruction and economic carnage could finally come to an end. We could stem the bleeding because, like, the Iranians had acknowledged, yeah, we are actually we are negotiating this time. But it all turned out to be nothing. The Donald, through this bluster, has managed to jawbone yield on the 10-year T-note down to 4.4%, just out of the danger area where there are repercussions for the broader economy. And so the war drags on in a ridiculous status quo that can only end with America admitting a massive strategic defeat on the battlefields of Iran. And we're just kind of delaying, like so much of American politics is just kicking the can down the road. And that's just what we're doing with this Iran war. I don't know. How are you feeling about it, Brian? Any reason for optimism on your end, or are you just like me?
Well, I noticed that the price of gas is down about 20 cents over, I think, the past week or so. I don't know if you're seeing that up there in Maine.
Same up here.
Which I think is hard to imagine. I just don't. I also see these reports about how a critical shortage of oil is coming down the pipeline sooner, and I just think it's like the early days of COVID where people are just staying home and no one has to work, but we're still getting paid and you don't have to pay rent. And like, oh, yeah, this is great. And then at some point you go to the grocery store and there's no food. There's mask mandates and people are eyeing each other suspiciously. And yeah, you're getting these, they're trying to cram some kind of, federal vaccine requirement, trying to invade your medical privacy and inflict this on everyone. And people are I don't know. They're reporting each other to the Gestapo, basically, and so I think, I don't get a good feeling about it at all, even though the price of gasoline is slightly diminished.
Yes, that ominous feeling of the calm before the storm. It does. It seems like an eerie calm before before we start to face some of the actual repercussions of what's going on over there.
I think,
man, it sure is a depressing state of affairs. You really, man. I mean, I guess what I'm hoping for, I'm looking forward to the recognition that we have suffered some kind of a strategic defeat. And a specific kind of strategic defeat we're suffering here is a massive one. And I'm becoming impatient. Maybe my brain is all ADD'd out from the internet age and overstimulated with way too many channels for entertainment. But man, I am impatient. I want the Trump administration to have to face the music, and I think that's what the Donald haters hate about him. He always manages to wriggle his way out of, just when you think he's going to have to finally face the music, he always just wriggles his way out at the very end. In this case, I don't think he can wriggle his way out. I think it's just a dilatory tactic, a delay tactic, right? This word dilatory, it's like a legal term for like intentionally delaying proceedings. That's where it feels like we're at, and it's very, very unsatisfying. That's it. We want that's how this whole thing feels. Unsatisfying. We've gotten ourselves engaged in another unfortunate military misadventure in the Middle East, and there's no recognition that that's what we've done quite yet. So I don't know. It can't be too far down the pike, Brian?
Well, I think the reckoning is likely to come in midterms, which are in the fall, right? But on the other hand, I think like the establishment is gonna throw like a crazy amount of money into some of these elections, such as Graham Platner versus Susan Collins up there in Maine.
Yeah, that's a great segue, Brian, because we've had Mr. Platner all over the news this week. I mean, this man, he's always on Breaking Point. His name is always coming up on Breaking Points. He himself has been on there any number of times. And a couple of big splashes regarding Mr. Platner in the news cycle this week, Brian. Of course, there's the first thing that happened was did you see this thing where one of these Massachusetts senators, not senators but representatives from Massachusetts, this guy Jake Auchincloss, he was coming out saying that Democrats in Maine should vote for someone else besides Platner, because he's the presumptive nominee, because our governor, Commandant Janet Mills, is dropping out. She must have figured she's got zero chance after her horrific COVID track record, and so now we've got this guy Jake Auchincloss making comments to the national media, namely CNN. That Democrats in Maine should vote for somebody else other than Mr. Platner. Wild stuff, Brian.
Well, if there's one thing that Mainers love, it's massholes telling them what to do.
Yes, I'm sure this is going to go over big up here in Maine. It's amazing to me, and this really goes back to the 2016 primary where the Democratic National Committee cheated on behalf of Hillary Clinton to make sure that Bernie Sanders could not become the Democratic nominee. And we all know you can still go on, and is it Real Clear Politics? I think their website still has the 2016 polling up that shows Bernie Sanders with a substantial margin over Donald Trump in 2016. I mean, it's like they would just rather watch Hillary, collapse than move forward with a actual leftist platform like what Bernie Sanders has. And the reason for that, as we've said many times on this venerable podcast, Brian, is that the Democrats had to switch tactics. They used to be funded by the labor unions in the 50s and 60s and 70s. But then in the 90s, after the collapse of the labor unions, once we moved all of our manufacturing overseas and unions had lost their political power, the Democrats moved to having a corporate donor base and taking money from the same corporate donors that had historically funded the Republican Party. And so that's why, of course, they can't have Bernie Sanders winning any primaries, and why they had to cheat in 2016. You may recall Donna Brazile was the chair of the DNC, and she wrote about it in her book. The DNC got sued and had to admit that they were giving the debate questions to Hillary prior to the debates and not to Bernie, in the primary debates. And then in 2020, we've talked about it 1,000 times, but you had the triumvirate, the dubious triumvirate of Steyer, Amy Klobuchar, and Pete Buttigieg all drop out on the same day. The stalwart Elizabeth Warren staying to divide the progressive vote and thereby scuttle Bernie's chances, even though he had won the Las Vegas primary, scuttle his chances of securing the nomination there on Super Tuesday in 2020. And this is just more of the same, man. It's like the Democrats haven't learned a thing, or they don't want to learn a thing, or they love taking donations and funding from corporate entities because, this business from Mr. Auchinclaw is absolutely ridiculous. It's just like, man, like the Dems, they're just so hopeless. It would be so nice to have a third party.
I don't.
Yeah, Brian. So that's the first big story from Mr. Platner this week. What did you think of it?
Well, I don't think the Dems are like hopeless. I think they're doing what they're supposed to do, and I don't think that Bernie Sanders has any serious intention of taking on the establishment. I guess they're running a distraction campaign, basically. As like Kurt Metzger says, like voting for like the president, right? It's like voting for the head of your student council, right? It's not like it has any meaningful impact on the administration and the administration of the country, or how things are. And so all these like lesser political offices are going to be the same thing. Although, I suppose. Well, political elections matter like the sheep on a farm getting together and voicing their say in some way. And so, obviously it has some kind of impact. I guess you would want the government to like represent the will of the people in some way, but that is just, we are just a long way from that, huh?
Well, the political situation was such in the 1930s that we could get New Deal legislation passed. That has a lot I think that the current state of play has a lot to do with the fact that the Soviet Union has since collapsed. And I do think that the ability of Franklin Delano Roosevelt to pass New Deal legislation in the 1930s has everything to do with the 1917 Russian Revolution. And that I do think that our ruling class here has no competition since the 1991 collapse of the Soviet Union. And so they just think that they don't have any social responsibility whatsoever. Even the Gilded Age robber barons, the Carnegies and the Rockefellers, they were building hospital wings and creating endowments and building museums. They were very concerned about their public image. And it seems like billionaires these days, or robber barons these days, don't have any sort of similar sense of civic responsibility. And what would we need to get back to a place where actual policies that actually benefit most of us, like the vast majority of us, when are we going to be able to make that? What would we need to make that happen? And I don't really know. If there is no other game in town, if there's no competition, if there's no Soviet Union to remind the rich and powerful that the New Deal is the compromise that keeps them in their privileged positions. Well, without that, I don't know how we're going to fix this mess we've gotten ourselves into.
I guess, you need some normalizing event to happen, or it's going to end in some kind of bloody revolution. I guess one thing is that Peter Thiel's moved to Argentina, right?
Yes.
Which is also, where the Fuhrer escaped to, and there's rumors about that, but I guess a bunch of the Nazis escaped to. People are always taking refuge in Argentina for some reason, it's interesting because Peter Thiel, you would think, J.D. Vance is like his protege, right? And Palantir, his tracking project of every action of Americans, gets all kinds of contracts from the government. And I guess he's got his PayPal mafia, has a lot of influence in Washington and is part of the government and whatnot. But he still sees fit to leave. And I guess it's like the political climate in America. And I guess what it is they're threatening some kind of billionaire tax in California. So I don't know. It's weird that on the one hand, that the billionaire or this billionaire feels like he needs to escape. I don't know. Maybe that does bode well. That some kind of reckoning is coming. Or I don't know. What do you think, Nate?
Well, yeah, you said it already, Brian. Like Argentina's famous because that's where the high command of the Nazi Party tried to escape to, after the fall of the Reich in '45. And there's all the stories about. I think it was about 10 years ago they prosecuted some 97-year-old, former party official, former German party official down there in Argentina, who had been involved in the Holocaust during his days as a Reich staffer. But yeah, it is like the thing that comes to my mind is like these people can move to Argentina to try, but like Peter Thiel's billions of dollars, they're here in the United States, right? This man he's not going to Argentina and getting a job, right? He is sucking up passive income from the United States and accessing his American bank accounts from Argentina, right? Isn't that what he's doing? I mean, it's like, I don't know. I just feel like, well, I do agree that billionaires could, not the landlords, right? The landlords of New York City, they can never escape Mamdani because their buildings aren't located in New York City. But with liquid assets like cash, you could move that across state lines. But I do feel like you could never, billionaires can't really threaten to leave the country as a whole in the way that they can threaten to leave any particular state or city. And that really is like we have a whole bunch of, every year we have a whole bunch of goods and services get produced and distributed, and then we have a whole bunch of goods and services, those same goods and services get consumed. And the real question, the question that the class war consumes itself with is who has to do all the building of goods and the production of goods and services, who has to do the producing, and then who is entitled to do the consuming. And what we mean when we say that Peter Thiel is a billionaire is that he has built up all of these claims on all the rest of our labor, meaning his U.S. dollars, his wealth, reckoned in U.S. dollars, let's say, his assets. And I just feel like when we say assets, we mean, entitlement to things that produce money. And I just feel like we can stop people from passively consuming our wealth fairly easily. You could just, stop the billionaires from leaving, through legal means. You can still because all of their passive income, no matter where they go in the world, is here in America. I mean, you could just, you could control their access to it fairly easily. But of course, we don't get a real discourse over the pros and cons of taxing billionaires. We get a farcical propaganda campaign designed to relieve the billionaires of paying any taxes at all, and that's how you get Warren Buffett complaining about the fact that he pays a lower percentage in taxes on his income than his secretary does. So yeah, man, I wonder why. It does seem like Peter Thiel, he has introduced a lot of anarchy into the American economy, and now he thinks he can abscond. I wonder how that's going to work out for him.
Probably pretty well. I don't know what we're gonna do, but I guess he's bought a $12 million mansion down there. What was it? Sao Paulo? That's Brazil, right? Whatever the capital is down there.
Buenos Aires is the capital of Argentina.
There you go. Well, I mean, I guess it bodes well that he does feel like he has to leave in the first place. I guess for the people, the power to the people, that hopefully we have something. I mean, I guess to Kurt Metzger's point about the government, being like the student body is, certainly the lizard people in charge would like that to be the case. And then how there's some gerrymandering over how much influence probably these political offices have. And so I don't know, we have to take action, I guess, to try to make sure that our vote is meaningful. And I guess that probably means not getting caught chasing our own tail with wedge issues and infighting among the populace.
Yes, that's it, right? It's it's a tough thing to accrue billions of dollars in a democracy, right? Because the democracy can always undo the economic arrangement that you've created to get your billions of dollars. And so it's how do you hoard that much wealth in a democracy? You really have to, it takes a concerted propaganda effort. And you really have to muddy the waters or blind people to the common sense of it. And I do love Kurt Metzger's, I love the idea that we are just voting for the student body. We think we're voting for the principal of the school so that we can make some actual changes to the way the administration runs. But really, we're voting for the student body president. And because we've public has confused the two. The ceremonial student body president for the actual functional roles of principal and vice principal. Because we think we're voting for the principal, but we're actually voting for student body president that doesn't have any actual power. It's just like a ritual they use to manufacture consent for the continued the unjust economic situation that they would like to perpetuate because it's to their advantage. But they are a tiny minority, man, and I just feel like it's trivially easy for a democratic majority within a democracy, or it should be trivially easy for a democratic majority within a democracy to vote in their own best interests. But boy, it sure illustrates the problem with democracy, the much ballyhooed problems with democracy celebrated by the likes of Plato in 450 BC. So I mean, we're still, we're still grappling with the same problem here in 2026 AD.
Well, the empire sure struck back with this Thomas Massey election, and all these boomers ousted their representative of many years. It's wild.
Speaking of these crazy billionaires, Brian, the Wall Street Journal had an article this weekend about Mr. Bill Gates and the reality of his life. Let's see. I think we last heard from Mr. Gates when during the Epstein file dump over the winter, when Epstein was referencing the fact that Bill Gates was looking for some kind of a he had gotten some kind of an STD from one of these prostitutes or one of these Epstein young ladies, and he was trying to slip the antidote to the STD surreptitiously to his wife Melinda Gates, who had divorced him 3-4 years ago over his ties to Jeffrey Epstein. And so one thing that I just wanted to read this little paragraph here from the Wall Street Journal, because it really shows how our perceptions are being managed within a democracy. And so here's the paragraph. Bill Gates' employees have spent years carefully cultivating his image, down to keeping a custom-sized mannequin to test his outfits for different days of the week. A styling group stores troves of neutral tone crew and V-neck sweaters, button-down shirts, slacks, and extra pairs of the silver lining optician's carbon glasses at an off-site building, current and former employees said. Once options are selected for public-facing engagements, employees usually send 3 options for approval by senior staff. The goal? To depict someone calm and approachable like Mr. Rogers. Well, I mean, just think about the level of curation going on here. You know, the level of manipulation, like trying to put a shine on this total scumbag Bill Gates to try to make him seem like someone we should be admiring. The article noted that a 2019 survey of public figures that people look up to had Gates at the top, ahead of both the Dalai Lama and Pope Francis, which is absolutely wild. That's the level the propaganda had worked. Even with Bill Gates being a famous anti-capitalist, having to face antitrust legislation from the government in the 1990s for his cynical destruction of the Netscape Navigator web browser. So even with his famous antitrust travails in the 1990s, Gates had managed to get his reputation up there with the Dalai Lama and the Pope as late as 2019. But then we all know what happened in the summer of 2019. That's when Epstein got arrested and mysteriously died in jail. And then that was the end. No amount of warehouses filled with neutral tone sweaters and employees and staffers and public and PR firms could bring Mr. Gates back from the destruction of his reputation. And so, man, it sure is like, I think it's like once a week we say all the world's a stage and the men and women merely players, quoting Shakespeare. And this is just another example of how the reality we live in is fabricated and curated, as if we live within the matrix, we live inside this structure of ideas and perceptions that aren't authentic to reality at all.
Well, I guess my feeling is that Bill Gates, the destruction of his reputation didn't really come probably until like the Donald's reelection, or at least my recollection, is that like Bill Gates was on the news a lot during like the COVID times, and people were like trusting what this creepy billionaire in like an Argyle sweater had to say for some reason, and I don't know, like the reelection of the Donald like really turned the public zeitgeist on the Epstein business. I think. I mean, it was certainly a growing issue. Like I can't remember when Epstein died. Was that like 2019 or something like that?
Yeah, it was July of 2019 when Epstein. I think it was the spring of 2019 when he was arrested at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey.
I mean, that raised the public consciousness, but. Yeah, like the weaponization of like of Epstein, like against the Donald. I mean, people like me, I guess. I guess I figured that the Donald was like actually going to release the Epstein files.
Yeah.
But the yeah. Anyway, like well, a lot of people like the libtards in quotes or whatever hate the Donald, and now that the Epstein business is like a weapon in their arsenal now. As opposed to like, I feel like the Epstein files were still trying to be contained as a source of like left-wing ire during the Biden years. The weaponization against the Donald has really caused the Epstein files to permeate the public zeitgeist. And in any case, it's a long way of saying at least everyone hates Bill Gates now. The dude is just a ridiculous fiend. God bless Melinda Gates for divorcing him. And that whole business about trying to surreptitiously, I don't know, inoculate or whatever it is, his wife there with the STD medication is just the richest story. That is just in the Great Divine Comedy. I mean, there's a lot of crazy things going on, but we'll always have that one.
Well, I'm just like you, Brian. I thought for sure that if the Donald was implicated in the Epstein files, that he would not, hint that he was going to release them as a way of stringing his followers along. And I would have thought if I was in the Epstein files, it probably wouldn't be the most strategic move, maybe not the best tactic to hint that you're going to release the files if, in fact, you're in the files yourself. I mean, that is just. I really thought that the fact that that he was, hinting that he would release them meant that he wasn't in them, and that's just not true at all. I don't know. The Donald, it can't. I mean, he has like managed to win 2 elections and come back from being nearly politically dead after the 2020 election. He's managed to do all of this, and I gotta think there's some kind of a decent strategist, kicking around inside the Donald's brain. But man, it's like just like the Iran thing. It's like, wow. I mean, these are just terrible, terrible brain dead decisions, and so. I guess we'll never go broke underestimating the ineptitude of Mr. Trump. I guess it's just wild stuff. But yeah, man. And by the way, Bill Gates. I mean, he was like banging on about climate change and vaccines for years before COVID. But I noticed that the reputation of vaccines took a major hit during the COVID era, of course, and Gates now needs to advocate for not climate change, not green energy like wind farms. He needs to advocate for any and all energy, all hands on deck from an energy perspective, whether that's burning coal or building nuclear plants, because he is investing in these data centers now. So it's interesting to hear the man change his tune on climate change. So yeah, that's Bill Gates. You can't trust him any further than you can throw him, eh, Brian?
Yeah. Yeah, the climate change alarmism just doesn't have the same gravitas that it used to, huh?
Yeah, I was on board when was it, 2003 or 4, whenever that Al Gore movie came out, Inconvenient Truth. And I was like, oh my God, by like 2020, I can't remember when it was supposed to be that a third of Florida was supposed to be underwater, but it was like coming up. But now it's been 20 years, and the water levels in Florida, well, they haven't changed all that much. I can't help but notice that like the Statue of Liberty is not like underwater. It's not like things don't seem that different now than they did 100 years ago.
Well, go ahead. I'll take the polar ice caps melting as a serious threat when the price of real estate in Miami starts to drop. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I do think that it's best not to pollute our environment. But I think but it does seem like there's something wrong with the climate change models. I'm sure their models really did say that Florida would be underwater, or a third of Florida would be underwater by 2020. But can we just admit that their models don't match reality and that they have a bunch of assumptions built into them, obviously, that aren't really safe assumptions or something like that? It does seem like the predictions of the climatologists don't really ever seem to pan out.
Well, I think
it seems. Oh, go ahead.
I think it's an effective like tool of persuasion, because like anytime it's like brutally hot out, you get it twisted. Like you're like, it ties with your sense of like guilt or shame or something. Yeah. Because you're like, oh man, I burnt too much gasoline, and like you take on this. Yeah, I don't know, like you get like these negative feelings, or if it's like snowing a crazy amount, like it's a very visceral feeling when you're dealing with wild weather environments, and it's not like pleasant and 70 degrees out. So I think it's an effective piece of propaganda, although certainly I don't think we should be polluting either. It's just that the climate change narrative is some crazy thing of controlling the masses. Yeah.
But we should have known when, the big climate conventions, everyone takes their private jets to them. We should have known. Like, it's like, is Gates concerned about climate change? Because if he was, you'd think he wouldn't be flying his Gulfstream 5 all over the world. You'd think he would, try to limit his own emissions if that were the case. So yeah, I do think that the hypocrisy of the climate change, chain rattlers should have been our first clue, I suppose, that these people not on the level.
Indeed.
Well, Brian, another big news this week. Pope Leo XIV dropped an 84-page anti-AI manifesto, called it an encyclical. If you're like me and you didn't know what an encyclical was, it's a high-level papal teaching document intended for the global Catholic community. I didn't know that these were things that popes issued, but apparently it's a thing. And so, yeah, the 84. I heard Crystal and Sagar talking about this, and I read a few summaries of it in the Wall Street Journal opinion page, although oddly the regular news side didn't cover this story. You can only some opinions talking about it, but it's just what you would think. What is AI? Why does it pose a big risk? Well, there's like structural unemployment. There's all kinds of disasters that could befall us. You could have AI becoming too powerful. It could make a tiny number of us way more powerful than others. Yeah, the 84-page manifesto is exactly what you would think would be in it, but I just thought it was really interesting that the Pope is dropping this thing. And in so doing, he made a lengthy comparison between AI and the Tower of Babel, Brian, which is the very same comparison you made on this podcast any number of times, huh?
Yes.
And we all know our story, the Tower of Babel. The idea here is that the Babylonians built in the Old Testament, mankind built up a massive tower trying to reach to the heavens and reached God. But the God thought that this was bad, and so he struck down mankind, and he struck down the tower and then suffered mankind to speak all different languages so that we couldn't coordinate with each other and build any more towers to heaven. And this is Genesis chapter 11. You'll find this wild tale in. And this is the simile the Pope invoked to describe ChatGPT and its ilk. So pretty good, Brian. You must feel pleased that the Pope has selected the same allegory that you selected when talking about AI.
Well, so is the Pope saying that the AI is like building the Tower of Babel and we're going to get struck down by God?
Yeah, he's saying that we're trying to make ourselves like God. And in so doing, we are in error, in sin, and we should watch out for this AI business.
All right. Well, I think the dangers of AI, I don't know if that really does justice to the dangers of AI. And I think the whole point of humanity is in that some ways we are like God already. We've eaten of the fruit of, in the Garden of Eden there. And we have the knowledge of good and evil. But, I'm sure in some ways he's right. I don't know. I guess my prediction is that this does nothing to deter the building of data centers and whatnot.
Yeah, well, it's nice to see the Pope bringing publicity onto this, at least the economic dangers of AI. One point there that I just wanted to double click on what you were saying, talking about, trying to make ourselves like God, or eating of the forbidden fruit of the forbidden fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. I was writing this week, the Substack essay I wrote this week was about the Medici of Florence and their mysterious hedge maze, and the Hermeticism with which the Medici of Florence became obsessed during the Renaissance. And I just have a little snippet here from the Corpus Hermeticum. Now, the Corpus Hermeticum, as you know, Brian, is just like the Bible. It's a compilation of 11 books, much like the Christian Bible is a compilation of books. And it is the literature associated with the Platonic school of thought called Hermeticism. Now, Hermeticism, like Christianity, is itself a Platonic school of thought, right? Plato is the man who in 450 BC wrote about reality as if wrote about the observable universe as if it is an illusion, right? He likened it to shadows flickering on a cave wall. And Plato's idea was that there is another unseen realm of perfection, and we are experiencing an emanation, a mere emanation from that realm, like a shadow, and that we're living in this imperfect, fallen, ever-changing world that is a reflection or an emanation or a shadow of this eternal realm of perfection. And so this dualism, right, the idea that we live in one universe, but there's another hidden universe another hidden universe that's better than this one, right? Plato invoked hierarchy, right? The divine light to which the pilgrim climbing his way out of Plato's cave in that famous allegory from 450 BC, right? It's better to be in the presence of divine light than to be chained in the cave, experiencing a shadow or an emanation or an illusion. Okay, so Platonism, was it was fine enough in 450 BC, but Plato became really popular 500 years after his death when the Roman Empire started to fall apart, and this idea of a fallen reality really resonated with the dismayed and bewildered denizens of a collapsing empire. Brian, that's us, by the way. We're also the dismayed and bewildered denizens of a collapsing empire. And to them, the notion that we live in this fallen reality made a hell of a lot of sense as their Roman Empire is collapsing around them, and the barbarians are pounding at the gates. And so a whole flock of these Platonic schools of thought characterized the 2nd and 3rd centuries BC. The 300s and the 400s, AD, the 300s and the 400s, when the fall of Rome was really happening, in earnest. And so there's like Gnosticism, Christianity, and Hermeticism are 3 examples of Platonic schools of thought. Neoplatonism was another one. St. Augustine was a Neoplatonist before he found Christianity and became one of the key Christian figures in all of history. And the point here, though, is that the Roman Catholic Church, right, the last emperors of Rome were Christian emperors, and they were trying to shore up their waning political power, which was slipping through their fingers like grains of sand. And that is why they plucked from among the bouquet of Platonic flowers on offer at the end of the Roman Empire, they plucked Christianity. Because the Roman Catholic Church came with this idea that you are not, you have to be humble before God, right? It is a sin to try to make yourself like God. And the reason is that the Roman Catholic Church was establishing a spiritual monopoly. And they did for 1,000 years, right? It was like a heresy to suggest that you should make yourself at all like God. And when the Christian Roman emperors, the last emperors of Rome, made Christianity the state religion of the dying empire, they destroyed all of the old pagan temples and all the old pagan literature, and that included all of the Platonic rivals and competitors to Christianity. Like Christianity became the one true faith that you had to subscribe to. And it's interesting to note the difference in tone between like the Bible or let's say the Roman Catholic Church and their insistence that that you must be humble and that trying to make yourself like God is some kind of a cardinal sin. And then this is the language, this is what I'm trying to get to. This little snippet here is from the Corpus Hermeticum. And it says, "If then you do not make yourself equal to God, you cannot apprehend God, for like is known by like. Leap clear of all that is corporeal, and make yourself grown to a like expanse with that greatness which is beyond all measure. Rise above all time and become eternal. Then you will apprehend God." That's the end of the quote. So it's just very interesting how different that is than the Christian conception of worshiping God, where you're supposed to grovel at God's feet and be respectful, and you can see why the Roman state would prefer a religion where people are subservient, and that the Catholic Church is the intermediary between God and people, like the sole intermediary, giving them a monopoly as kind of the toll booth on the highway to divinity. And it's interesting to see that the other Platonic cousins are not like that. The other Platonic schools of thought, they emphasize a Platonic ascent out of this sullied and dirty and fallen world into a transcendent and higher, divine realm. They all have that idea of the archetypical journey, but it's interesting just how you get there and who you have to pay homage to. And the final Lincoln log in this little cabin here is that the Medici of Florence, obviously the Roman emperors, they banned Hermeticism, right? It became like a heresy for most of the Middle Ages, but towards the end of the Middle Ages, the Medici of Florence became very interested in Platonism, and then when they found the Corpus Hermeticum, after in the Greek libraries of Constantinople, as that city was destroyed not destroyed, but taken over by the Turkish Sultan, a lot of that Greek learning from the libraries of Constantinople, renamed Istanbul, made its way back into Western Europe. And so the Medici were thrilled to get their hands on the Corpus Hermeticum. It became the basis of Renaissance alchemy. And the Medici put a hedge maze out behind their palazzo in Florence that illustrates this idea of the alchemical journey, or the Platonic ascent, or what have you. Like the idea of the epic journey, or the idea of the transformative journey, right? It's like all over. It's all over Greco-Roman culture. It's like the Odyssey is that way. It's a story about a journey. Or the grain goddess Demeter, who descends into the depths of hell to rescue her daughter, like the motherly grain goddess. That's her myth. And so the idea of the transformative voyage is baked into that myth as well. And of course, it was Roman statues of Demeter. They called her Ceres, right? She's the grain goddess. This is where we get the word cereal from. Statues of Demeter mark both the start and the finish, two different statues within the Medici's hedge maze that allegorizes the alchemical journey up behind Palazzo Pitti. So anyway, that's the story of the Medici, Brian. I think you may already know all of that story, but what you were saying reminded me of it, also because I was writing about it this week.
Well, there's certainly a way in which papal Catholicism is philosophically underwhelming and seems like a way of controlling the masses more than being a vehicle of spiritual enlightenment. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of why Platonism is interesting. I guess despite my intuition that there's certainly something to Christianity, but I just don't know about this this papal establishment or what have you.
Well, I think you're exactly right, Brian. I think that it's Platonism that's real. It actually is true that we are living in some kind of an illusion. And it seems so consistent. It's easy to fall. It's easy to fall for the trick until you drop some psychedelic drugs into. It's like that's what they were doing at Eleusis, at the cult of Demeter, at the cult of Demeter at Eleusis. That was what they were drinking. They had this thin, watery beer-like substance, the kykeon of Demeter. The Odyssey and the Iliad are attributed to this poet Homer, right? But it's an oral tradition that has many authors passed down through time. We just call the author Homer, and Homer also wrote this hymn to Demeter, in which the contents of this kykeon are described as a thin drink, like a beer-like drink that's made from cereal grains. Demeter's the grain goddess. The modern archaeological evidence strongly suggests that they're finding ergot in human job, in the calculus on human teeth found at these archaeological sites where the rites of Demeter were performed, and then they also have the drinking vessels also test positive for ergot. So it's pretty hard to argue that what they were doing was anything other than perturbing their consciousness with these psychedelic drugs. Like ergot is it's a magic mushroom that grows on cereal grains. It's sometimes cited as the cause of the Salem witch trials of the 1600s. Well, anyway, the point of the psychedelic drugs is that the reality, the illusion we're living in is very convincing, much like a reflection on a still day in a mill pond. If you're looking at a pond and the pond is perfectly flat, and you see your reflection looking back at you, the reflection looks very convincing, right? But what drugs do, it's like the equivalent of, well, at least the specific class of drugs we're talking about with respect to ancient pagan rituals. It's like dropping a stone into the pond that creates ripples and slightly perturbs the image and makes the observer realize, oh, I'm looking at an image, not the actual thing. And that's the utility of these psychedelic drugs. They perturb reality. They put some ripples in reality that alert the observer that what you're seeing is a reflection and not the genuine article. And so that's the connection between the ancient rites of Demeter, the Renaissance, the Medici, and psychedelic drugs.
All right.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. Okay, so what else do we got here this week, Brian? We got the okay, so this is a good one. Americans falling behind on credit cards. This was a feature in the Wall Street Journal this week, this past week. And it's just interesting to note that in the first quarter of this year, the percentage of credit card balances that were at least 90 days delinquent rose to 13%, according to data released in May by the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. That's the highest level in 15 years, the most since the period directly following the 2008 financial crisis. So interesting to see the credit card numbers are starting to pile up there. Well, I can't believe that the 90-day delinquency rate is 13%. That seems like a lot just to me, just to my ear. I mean, I just have never been late paying my credit card, so it's hard to imagine being 90 days delinquent. But you'd have to be in pretty serious financial straits to be 90 days delinquent, I would think, like job losses or financial troubles of some kind. And I can't believe it's like almost 15% of us.
Well, pour one out for the homies paying 25% on their debt. That seems like absolutely brutal.
Oh, yeah, that's a trap right there. This is why the Bible is very, very clear about warning against debt. You can end up in a situation where, we all owe all of our money to a tiny minority of rich people, and everyone except those rich people will be stripped of their motivation, stripped of their any incentive to continue playing the economic game. When the scoreboard is 10 million to nothing, like who wants to, if you're on the team with nothing, why would you continue to play the game? You're just going to go home at that point. And that's what happens when you have too much debt building up. That's why the Bible is so cautious and gives so many warnings about debt, because that is the tendency without the periodic debt forgivenesses, which are explicitly called for by the Old Testament.
Well, it's not exactly surprising, the price of gas having doubled and everything costing a veritable fortune anyway. And, with wages essentially remaining the same, it's not, you got to take on those credit cards to live. So
I think you're hitting the nail on the head there, Brian. That's it.
Yeah, not great.
I heard Dave Smith on his podcast. Was it this week? Maybe I heard him talking about this idea. The first thing I heard Dave Smith say that he didn't think that the Kamala Harris, in the counterfactual scenario that Kamala Harris would be in Iran, and I was like, "What is? It's only been like 3 weeks since that guy Russ Hochstein, the Biden staffer, went on told truthout.org that the Biden administration was preparing for potential action in Iran." So I'm like, yeah, I don't think it matters who we elect. I think that's the moral of the story here. No matter who you vote for, you're getting the endless wars and the bank bailouts. The other thing I heard Smith say was, the Marxist prophecy, it really comes down to this idea that technology is going to replace so many workers that it will make, essentially, the capitalist mode of production distribution utterly untenable. And I don't know, it's like, I guess you have to believe sort of on faith. If you're going to argue with that, if you're going to disagree, right, you have to take the position that there will always be enough new jobs to replace the old ones. So like when the horse and, like the factory that makes the horse whips, for the horse buggies, well, they're going out of business, but hopefully you can get a new job making bumpers for your Model T, right? This is the idea that you'll just somehow, through some divine providence, circumstances will just conspire, make sure that there are enough jobs for the entire population of people who need to find a way to put food on their table. And I don't know. I mean, it just seems like such a bizarre article of faith to me. It seems to me that we have already now, obviously, Marx was writing back in the Golden Age, right? The 1870s for Capital, Volume 1, and then Capital's Volume 2 and 3 were published posthumously in 1892. So he was really living in the Golden Age, the Rockefeller and the Carnegie era. And that era, we already talked about, that era really did come to a head in the after the Russian Revolution of 1917. We had to fundamentally alter the social contract to enfranchise, the American workforce here with the New Deal. And but then World War II happened, and our ruling class used that opportunity to, I don't know, weave some kind of a reality for public consumption in which we, in which they could get away with gradually rolling back the New Deal. And we've seen it 1,000 times. It's classic internet lore at this point. But there is that graph that shows that the compensation for like the productivity of labor is just obviously with the more technology comes out, the more productive a worker can be. And if you look at a graph of worker productivity, it's just going steadily up and up and up throughout the entire 20th century. It makes sense. I'm an accountant. I have Microsoft Excel. If it was 1955, I wouldn't have Microsoft Excel, and you would need 10 or 15 of me just to keep the books, just to keep the books going. I mean, you just have to be using, pieces of paper to manually fill out all your transactions and all your charts of accounts. It would be, but with Excel, I can, one person can do the work of, a dozen. And so it makes sense that as a prosthesis for workers, that technology would be jacking up our productivity as the 20th century goes on. But in the early 1970s, you can see where there's a divergence where worker compensation in the United States goes flat. It goes stagnant. Well, productivity continues rising apace to this day. And there's a bunch of reasons for that. I mean, one big thing, there's technology like directly replacing workers, like we're talking about with Microsoft Excel. There's another thing where international communications, a form of technology, enables international jet travel enables factory owners to relocate their factories inside, offshore. Fire all their domestic workforces, relocate their factories to foreign shores, and hire foreign workforces for a fraction of the labor cost. By the way, one of the biggest strategic blunders in all of history, voluntarily deindustrializing is bad enough. But voluntarily deindustrializing and then voluntarily reindustrializing another country, I mean, you can't even find words to express the strategic stupidity of allowing that to happen. But be that as it may, pressures. There was also the advent of feminism, where we doubled the size of the workforce by dispatching our ladies to the factory gates along with the men, thereby doubling the supply of workers without doing anything about demand. When in fact demand was collapsing because of offshoring, as just mentioned, and so all of that effect had what happens when the supply of labor goes down, when the demand for labor goes down because of technology and the supply goes up because of the advent of feminism. Well, you get stagnant wages, and then of course following the 1970s was the 1980s when we had the rollout of credit cards, and you really hit the nail on the head a second ago, Brian. The gap between what we're being paid by our employers and the money we need to buy all the goods and services that we consume back from our employers, right? That it's just when it becomes too large, only credit. We used credit as a way to forestall the Marxian collapse. The prophecy of Karl Marx, where technology would prevent the ability of workers to negotiate for enough wages to buy back all the goods and services they're producing from their capitalist overlords, right? Well, debt is the way that we've forestalled the Marxian collapse, but it is not a permanent solution. It is a patch. It is a what do you call it? A stopgap solution. It is not a permanent one. And by the time 2008 rolled around, we had the debt detonated like a grenade. Like a bomb that blew up our entire economy in 2008. And now credit card delinquency rates are getting back to where they were on the eve of that disaster, and so it does seem ominous, eh?
It sure does. Let's see. Well, one thing about the Biden administration is, they just to the point about whether they'd start war in Iran. I mean, they did start an endless war with Russia and Ukraine, basically. So, I mean, there's that whole business. And then, I just wish we could kind of fast forward to the future, where it's like something out of like the Animatrix series, where we all live in giant cities but probably underground, and there's robots everywhere, and you'd be lucky to ever see the surface in your life. I want to fast forward to our neo techno fascist future and just see what it's like here. And this boring middle ground where the Donald can't decide what's going on in the war in Iran, is terribly boring. And so that we should. It's like the end of Monty Python, where the army is charging, but then you realize it's the same scene over and over, and you're like, get on with it.
Dude, that Iraq War has been exactly like the Holy Grail scene where that is a Holy Grail, right? Where the army is charging and they just keep getting closer, but they never arrive. Yeah, that's just what this Iran war feels like. That's hilarious. And I think it's also funny that you said that if you're going to be forced to be subjugated in a cyberpunk dystopia or hellscape, that you'd like to tear the Band-Aid off and get it over with, versus having to ponder whether it's going to happen, like the sword hanging over your head, like the sword of Damocles. That's hilarious. And I'm inclined to agree, man. If we're going to have to live in a cyberpunk dystopia, let's bring it on and stop, so we can stop worrying about it and get it out of the way.
Let's stop screwing around.
Yeah. All right, Brian. Well, I think we're coming up against time once again here, and we still have a whole bunch of topics we didn't get to, but hopefully we can get to those next week. And so this is usually the moment where I invite all of our System Failure listeners to pay us a little visit over at systemfailure.org. There you can read the essay I mentioned about the hedge maze out behind Palazzo Pitti and the genealogy, the Platonic genealogy of schools of thought like Hermeticism. Well, you can view that article complete with its pictures and its flavor text right there at systemfailure.org. You can also leave a comment for Brian or myself simply by clicking on the About page and clicking on the appropriate name. I will be back on Thursday with the weekly audio essay for you all's enjoyment. And then after that, we'll be back 1 week hence on Monday with you, Brian, for another one of the good old System Failure Podcast's regularly scheduled episodes. Yes, we'll talk to you all then. In the meantime, I hope you have a fantastic week.
All right.